Right now, in March 2026, the world is watching an unprecedented geopolitical crisis unfold. Following intense military escalations, the United States and Israel are engaged in a massive active conflict with Iran. We are seeing devastating airstrikes, regional retaliation, and the terrifying prospect of the Strait of Hormuz being completely shut down. But if you want to understand how this conflict is actually being fought, and why a full-scale American ground invasion of Iran is considered a near-impossible logistical nightmare, you have to look at the map. Historically, Persia has wielded massive international influence, but there is a glaring underlying problem that severely limits any regime that rules from Tehran. In gamer terms, Iran's geographic spawn point is completely nerfed. In fact, when you look closely, Iran's geography absolutely sucks. Welcome to US Geography. Today we are breaking down the mountains, the dead zones, and the geographic traps that are dictating the current 2026 war, and why surviving in Iran has always been an uphill battle. Let's start by looking at a topographic map of the country. To the west, you have the Zagros Mountains, a massive rugged chain that makes up a significant portion of the border with Iraq. To the north, the Alborz Mountains wall off the Caspian Sea coastline. Together, the Zagros and the Alborz largely protect the Iranian heartland, which sits atop high, arid plains. But these mountains act as both a fortress and a cage. Sure, they make invading Iran a brutal operation, but the Zagros can be used as an easily defensible high ground against any invading army from the west. Even if an enemy overcomes the outer rim, they still have to fight across the valleys of the heartland and take each city one by one. This is exactly why US and Israeli operations right now in 2026 are relying heavily on air superiority, destroying radars, drone facilities, and missile sites from the sky, rather than rushing to put boots on the ground. But here is why this geography sucks for Iran. It boxes them in. These mountains physically separate people and languages, causing numerous distinct ethnic and linguistic groups to develop inside the country. Keeping the nation united requires an iron fist. Furthermore, moving anything inside Iran is an expensive logistical nightmare. Think about it. To build a highway or a high-speed rail network connecting your major cities, you have to blast through thousands of miles of solid rock, build massive bridges over valleys, and maintain them through harsh winters. This severely limits their economic growth. When the 1980 Iran-Iraq War kicked off, Iraq could easily resupply its front line across flat terrain from major depots in Baghdad and Basra. Iranian troops, however, had to haul supplies far away from their population centers, directly across the Zagros Mountains. It was slow, expensive, and deadly. But the mountains aren't even the worst part. What happens when you get past the mountains and look at the actual heart of the country? You find absolute dead zones. The center and eastern parts of Iran are dominated by two massive deserts, the Dasht-e-Kavir, or Great Salt Desert, and the Dasht-e-Lut. These are not just your average deserts. They are some of the most unforgiving, hostile environments on planet Earth. The Dasht-e-Lut routinely records some of the highest land surface temperatures ever measured, sometimes hitting a blistering 159 degrees Fahrenheit or 70 degrees Celsius. There is virtually no agriculture, no massive cities, and no infrastructure in this massive void. It is a giant geographical black hole right in the middle of the country. Because the center is unlivable, the Iranian population is forced to live in a ring around the edges, clinging to the foothills of the mountains where the snowmelt provides fresh water. To put this into perspective, today Iran has 8 major cities with populations of over 1 million people. But because of this giant desert core, none of them are centrally located. This massive dead zone effectively cuts the eastern provinces off from the western provinces, making internal trade and administration incredibly inefficient. This brings us to another massive reason why Iran's geography is terrible: the water, or rather the lack of it. Think about the geography of the United States for a second. The US became an economic superpower largely because of the Mississippi River Basin, the greatest network of naturally navigable waterways in the world. You can load a barge full of wheat in Minnesota and float it all the way to New Orleans for pennies on the dollar. And Europe has the Rhine and the Danube doing the exact same thing. Iran has almost nothing. The country is practically devoid of navigable rivers. The only river that can support any real boat traffic is the Karun River in the far southwest, and even that is only navigable for a short distance. Without rivers to cheaply move goods internally, everything in Iran must be transported by truck or train over the brutal mountain passes we talked about earlier. This naturally inflates the cost of everything. Worse yet, Iran is currently facing a catastrophic water crisis. The high plains are drying up. Mismanagement, combined with a naturally arid climate and shrinking snowpacks in the mountains, means that ancient lakes and rivers are simply vanishing. Farming in the Iranian heartland is becoming harder every single year, pushing millions of people toward the already crowded megacities like Tehran, creating a ticking demographic time bomb. And if the deserts, mountains, and droughts weren't enough, the literal ground beneath Iran is trying to destroy it. The geography that created the Zagros Mountains wasn't a peaceful process. It is the result of the Arabian tectonic plate violently smashing into the Eurasian plate. Because Iran sits directly on top of this massive geological fault line, it is one of the most seismically active countries in the world. Devastating earthquakes are a regular occurrence. The country has to constantly rebuild its infrastructure, draining public funds and resulting in tragic losses of life. The 2003 Bam earthquake, for example, killed over 26,000 people and leveled an ancient city. You cannot build a stable, thriving economy when your geography actively shakes your cities to the ground every few decades. So the inside of Iran is a dry, shaking, mountainous desert. What about the outside? To the north, Iran has a massive coastline along the Caspian Sea. You might think, great, maritime trade. But the Caspian Sea is actually the world's largest lake. It is completely landlocked. Having a northern fleet there doesn't give Iran access to the global oceans. It only gives them access to Russia and a few Central Asian countries. To the east, Iran borders Afghanistan and Pakistan. Afghanistan is a mountainous, unstable region historically controlled by tribal warlords and the Taliban. Pakistan is a nuclear-armed state with over 240 million people. Expanding influence in this direction is practically impossible. To the north is Central Asia, historically dominated by nomadic hordes and today heavily under Russian influence. That leaves the West. Geographically, westward expansion into Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon is the path of least resistance. This perfectly explains why Iran has spent decades heavily investing in proxy networks. They aren't just trying to conquer, they are desperately trying to create a buffer zone for their highly vulnerable, trapped core. But geography did hand Iran one massive buff in the 20th century: energy. Roughly 10% of the world's proven oil reserves and 15% of its natural gas reserves are located in the southwestern corner of the country. This has brought tremendous wealth to the regime. But where is this vital resource extracted? Khuzestan. Khuzestan is essentially the only province located outside the protection of the Zagros Mountains. It sits on a flat plain connecting directly to Iraq. This means Iran's most valuable economic asset, the lifeblood of their entire nation, is located in their most geographically vulnerable, indefensible region. It is the easiest province for an enemy to occupy or strike in the event of a war. And that brings us to the ultimate geographic weakness, and the exact reason why the March 2026 war is terrifying the globe: the Strait of Hormuz. Persian empires have always been strong land powers, but historically weak naval powers. Today, almost all of Iran's oil and gas is extracted near the Persian Gulf. The only way for warships, or more importantly, commercial oil tankers, to exit the Gulf and reach the global market is through this narrow choke point. At its narrowest, the Strait of Hormuz is only 21 miles wide. For the global economy, this is the most critical maritime artery on Earth. In normal times, roughly 25% of the global supply of oil and 1/3 of the world's liquefied natural gas passes through this tiny 21-mile stretch. As US and Israeli airstrikes continue to dismantle Iranian military infrastructure today, Iran holds its ultimate geographic lever. Because they control the entire northern coastline of this strait, they possess the terrifying ability to blockade it with naval mines, fast attack boats, and anti-ship missiles. And that is exactly what we are seeing play out. As the strait becomes a war zone, the entire world is cut off from critical energy resources. The global economy is experiencing a massive shock, sending crude prices skyrocketing and hitting American consumers right at the gas pump. But this is a suicide lever for Iran. It's a mutual trap. If Iran permanently loses control of this 21-mile stretch to the US Navy, or if they destroy the waterway themselves, nothing goes in or out. Their entire economy, which relies almost exclusively on exporting that oil, instantly collapses. When you put it all together, Iran's geography is a nightmare. They are trapped behind mountains that are too expensive to build through. Their center is a dead, burning desert. They have no rivers for internal trade. The ground constantly shakes them to pieces. Their only real access to the global ocean is through a 21-mile wide choke point, and their most valuable economic resource sits totally unprotected on their border. The map is the ultimate battlefield. It explains why Iran acts the way it does, why it relies on proxy militias, and why the current war in 2026 is so incredibly dangerous for the entire world. Thank you for watching US Geography. If you want to understand how the map shapes the future of this conflict, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I'll see you again next week.